Welcome to the Coming Clean podcast. This is episode 10. I'm your host, Alan Randolph, your guide on this journey. And today we're going to take a little detour from talking about cleaning specifically to talk about COVID-19. The current pandemic has changed the world. I can speak for myself. I'm both frightened and frustrated. Am I going to get sick? Am I going to make others, especially my family, sick? So I'm super excited today to have as my guest the chairman and CEO of Adjuvance Technologies, a vaccine adjuvant company with headquarters in Lincoln, Nebraska. Actually, my guest and I grew up in the same hometown, Hebron, Nebraska, so we'll try and channel a little Hebron High School Bears energy today. But their headquarters in Lincoln, and their company's based on intellectual property from Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, New York. Prior to Adjuvance, he held senior leadership positions in a number of biotech companies, including Chiron, Samago, Dynavax. He led teams that have filed more than 100 investigational new drug applications, including 2 adjuvanted vaccines approved by major regulatory authorities, Fluad and Hepatitis B. In addition to other targets, Adjuvance is currently evaluating the utility of their lead adjuvant with COVID-19 vaccine. So he's in a unique position, grew up in my hometown, friend of mine, Dr. Tyler Martin. Thanks, doctor.
Thanks, Alan. It's great to be here.
So we'll jump right in. Let's talk about vaccines. We hear about maybe the fall or winter possibly. I heard you speak on a Facebook Live thing that you've done, which is fantastic. There was some Q&A about a couple of different types of vaccines that are being developed. Can you just share with us, where we are? And it's the primary question on everybody's mind.
Sure, Alan, happy to. There are essentially 3 types of vaccines that are being developed today. And 2 of them I'll refer to as the rapid vaccines, and then the third one is the traditional vaccines. So the rapid vaccines come in two flavors. The first one is RNA vaccines. So that would be, for instance, the kind of vaccines that Moderna is developing, or BioNTech in collaboration with Pfizer. Those are very rapid vaccine platforms because instead of making a protein, manufacturing a protein as you give us the vaccine, they give the nucleic acid signal so that your body makes the protein. And those nucleic acids are very, very rapid to manufacture. So they've kind of moved to the front of the line because they can get into testing so quickly. The problem with those vaccines is they've never worked before. So while they're fast, we don't know that they're going to work. And I think it's appropriate in the context of a situation like this one where there's a global emergency taking place to go with fast but high risk projects. So that's what those 2 would be. The second type of rapid vaccines are modified viral vector vaccines. And they use a virus called adenovirus that normally causes respiratory disease, mild respiratory disease in humans. And they insert specific COVID genes into that backbone. So again, they use a virus to deliver the nucleic acid signals so that your body will make the protein, the COVID protein, and have an immune response to it. Those vaccines would be, for instance, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine that was licensed from Oxford University. Those vaccines are also fast, and they're even faster to manufacture in very large doses than the RNA vaccines, but again, they've never been shown to work. So those are the rapid ones. We're all hoping that they work. They're moving into phase 2 kind of right now or in the next few weeks, but we don't know that they've ever worked. Then the traditional vaccines come along behind them, and they're slower because when you make a protein in a cell, you've got to do all sorts of quality testing to make sure that the protein that's coming out of that cell is what you want and not some other contaminant that might also grow in that cell. So establishing the manufacturing machinery is what really takes so long. Once you start testing them, they all take the same amount of time. You have to show that people generate an immune response. You have to follow them for a long enough time that you know that it's safe. So it's all about how quickly can you start that testing. Once the testing starts, it's about the same for any one of the various vaccines.
So those would be kind of the more 18-month to 2-year time frame that we were hearing about early on.
Yeah, yeah. So we would typically say it takes 18 months from the time you want to start that kind of a project until you have your manufacturing squared away so that you can start testing it.
Right. So we have hope. So beyond hope, I mean, everybody's racing to get the rapid high risk. Still too early to tell from what, if I'm interpreting that correct.
That's correct. As we start to see phase 2 results coming in, then we'll have a lot more information about which vaccines might actually work. But even then, we still need the phase 3 results, because that's where you have exposed enough people that you really start to see what the safety profile of a vaccine looks like. So obviously, if you see problems in very small samples like you have in a phase 1 or phase 2 study, you know that vaccine is not going to work. But because we're concerned about safety for vaccines, you really have to wait until you've treated lots of patients. Otherwise, you won't find whatever rare safety events might happen. If you treat 10 patients, you're not going to see a 1 in 1,000 problem. You've got to treat thousands of patients before you see a 1 in 1,000 problem, let alone a 1 in a million problem.
Right. Got it. Okay, just kind of trying to process it all as we go, which leads me kind of to my next question, which is about data, right? What do we believe? I mean, I make a living presenting information, so I'm fully aware that data can be used to advance, a specific theme or viewpoint. Obviously we would hope that in this case of global pandemic and public health event that everybody's perspective on the data was pure and that we were getting it in context, but we aren't, right? Because we're getting such wide spectrums of information, like shut everything down, we're going to be fine, hospitalizations are up, but deaths are down, like those crazy kids and there are no masks, right? We got it all. So from your perspective, what data should people be focused on at this juncture in where we are in the pandemic, and to give themselves the best ability to make informed decisions?
Yeah. Well, the best data is going to be the data that comes out of your local or state health departments, because at the end of the day, this situation for a particular person is very dependent on their local context. So for instance, in Nebraska right now, especially in Lincoln, Nebraska right now, our number of weekly cases is very, very low, and it's continued to be low for about the last month. The frequency of positive tests also remains very low. So typically what you want to see is that the number of cases are low and that the frequency of positive tests is less than 5%. Because as the frequency of positive tests starts to go up, what you're realizing is I'm probably missing cases, because if 20% of the people I'm testing are positive, then it means I'm missing some percent of the people that just aren't sick enough to come in and see me. So I don't really have a good handle on what's happening. On the other hand, if I'm testing so many people that my positive test rate is low, then I can be pretty sure I'm probably catching almost all the disease. It'll never be perfect, but I'm catching most of the disease. So it's the combination of the number of cases and the positive testing rate within your local area. And most larger cities and all the states all have testing results that they're posting online. But the best source is your local health department if you're in a situation where that, if you're in a city where that is being posted online. That's better information than the statewide information.
Right, or the national or the global.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Which all just sounds scary, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's not scary. And so, because it feels like that we've made some advancements in treatment, right? So it feels like maybe depending on the risk factors, I don't know. I guess I'm frustrated because it feels like it's, hey, we opened up beaches and bars and the kids ran out without masks and now we're back in where we started. It just doesn't feel like, that just doesn't quite make sense to me. Right? It feels like there's more to the story.
Yeah. Well, I think there's, lots of varying agendas in this entire situation that we find ourselves in. I think for an individual, the way to think about the problem is we don't know what the risks are. They're probably lower than we thought they were when we started, but they're higher than we thought they were a month ago.
Right.
And so the reasonable thing to do at the present time is, if you're going into a public place where you're around other people that you don't know and that you haven't been in a controlled setting with, you should probably wear a mask. So
Right.
if you go to the store, you should probably wear a mask. If you're at home with your family, you don't need to wear a mask because you've been living together for the last 3 months. But when you go out to the store, you don't know who's there, and the safe thing to do is to wear a mask. I don't know how long that's going to continue, but that's kind of the way I manage it now. Now, of course, I'm an older person, so I'm in a higher risk group than many. But I think it's just the logical thing to do right now is just, put on a mask if you're going out into public. If you're not, then don't.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of common sense. So tell us a little bit about what your company is working specifically on at Adjuvance Technologies as it relates to COVID and just in general.
Yeah. So adjuvants are agents that you add to a vaccine to further stimulate the immune response to that vaccine. They come in all sorts of different varieties. But the important thing with regard to COVID, there are two potential advantages. One is, if our vaccines don't work very well, adjuvants can make them work better. Or if the vaccines do work fairly well, by using an adjuvant, you can get more doses from the same amount of manufactured antigen. So for instance, we've just completed an experiment using influenza vaccine as a model, where we've shown that we can dilute out the vaccine 30x, but by adding the adjuvant, still get the same immune response that you got from the full dose of the vaccine. So that would mean, for instance, if you can make 1 million doses from that same manufactured amount of vaccine, we can make 30 million doses. So we can stretch that production out to cover 30 million people instead of 1 million people, which is important in a context where we want to be able to immunize everybody in the world with 2 doses. That means we need 16 billion doses of vaccine, and we've never made 16 billion doses of any vaccine. So so to be able to cut that by a factor of 30 and say, okay, well, instead of 16 billion, we now need 200 million, that would be a big advantage. So those are the kind of things that we're working on, and we're working with the NIH as well as some private vaccine manufacturers to look at our adjuvant in combination with their antigen, which is the protein piece, to see how we can potentially help.
Wow, that's exciting stuff. So it could be it's either making either more effective, but more than likely you're going to be multiplying the output.
Yes. Yeah.
Significantly,
which
to
we
help
call
us scale.
So we call that dose sparing. And so again, if you can get more doses from the same manufacturing capacity, in this context, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Does it work with both types of vaccines, the rapid, high risk, as well as the traditional?
That's a great question. We don't really know how it will work with the rapid vaccines. So we're kind of focusing on the traditional vaccine approach. And, it may turn out that they would be helpful for the rapid vaccines, but we know they're helpful for the traditional vaccines. So that's where we're kind of in that second wave of the tried and true that we know is going to work, but that is in fact slower.
Yeah. Well, I think this has taught us we're going to need all the technology and all the brain power. This isn't going to be the last, with the connected world we have, this will not be the last, unfortunately, episode like this. Well, if people want to know more about your company or get involved, can you just give them a little information, whether it's just wanting to know if they can get involved or just find out what you're doing, or maybe they want to invest, whatever it is?
Sure. So everyone would be welcome to look at our website, www.adjuvantetechnologies.com. There's lots of information there, and you can get a hold of us directly through our website. If you're a company that's interested in working with us, you can also get a hold of us through that website. And if you are an investor, we're not really looking for investors right now, but we're always open to people who want to make an investment. And so we'd be happy to chat with investors as well. We closed a $20 million Series A round last fall, so we're not actively seeking investors. But on the other hand, as you know, Alan, you can always do more if you have access to more capital. So, and particularly in this COVID situation, it's a place where we could do more if we had access to more capital.
Well, I encourage people to check it out. I thank you so much for your time. I know you've got a lot going on. Like I said, we grew up, we chewed the same dirt when we were very young. And I appreciate your time, Dr. Martin. And you stay safe, you and your family, and we'll talk soon, all right?
Thanks, Alan.
All right. Have a great day. We'll see you next week, everyone. Bye now.